Hello, BookTube. I'm very pleased to report that I have yet more mail. I really didn't anticipate this, and yet it's been quite a week for mail. I never thought, once upon a time, I never thought that I would call quite a week where I got 6 packages in the mail. But I would call that a very bad day, much less a very bad week. But times have changed, and I didn't think I'd be getting any mail. Instead, I think I've got mail every day this week. And if I get mail, you get mail. So we're going to go through these together. 3 packages. 3 ordinary book packages. No idea what's going on there. I had a wonderful time in our Marsathon live stream last night. That was great fun. Still baby steps. I'm still mastering the technology, and we're all still mastering the idea of talking together on camera. But it was a great deal of fun. So I will, if I remember, I will leave a link to the live stream down below. You can't, of course, watch it live, but you can still watch the glory that we did. It's Mike at Pints and Paperbacks recorded the whole thing. So let's see what we have here. Now, the first thing that we should keep in mind here is that all these dates are tentative. All these things have been sent out to me from publishers, but the publishing landscape is very fluid at the moment. So we double check the dates if any of these books are of real interest to you. Okay. Okay, this first one is slated for late August. It's called Analogous, and it is The Emergence of Technology Beyond Programmable Control by George Dyson. So we start off awful eggheady. George Dyson grew up in the rarefied world of Princeton's Institute for Advanced Study. His father was the theoretical physicist Freeman Dyson, and his mother was the esteemed mathematician Verena Huber Dyson. But George took a different path, dropping out of high school and heading west, where he was able to nurture his growing passion for adventure, the outdoors, and the cultures of indigenous America. As a young man, he built his own house, a treehouse 95 feet above the ground on the British Columbia coast, and constructed his own kayaks based on a design from the Inuit tribe. But Dyson also maintained a keen interest in his parents' world. A historian of science and technology, he has authored acclaimed books about the birth of digital computing and the mid-20th century efforts of a group of scientists, his father among them, to create an atomic-powered spaceship. Dyson, who lives today in Bellingham, Washington, has been affiliated with Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' space exploration company, since its beginning in the early 2000s. So that is the opening paragraph about our author. Quickly off the top of my head, it gives me the impression that he's a Fruit Loop, but I haven't read his books, so I don't know. With that preamble aside, Farrar, Straus & Giroux is very excited to announce the forthcoming publication of George Dyson's Analogous, The Emergence of Technology Beyond Programmable Control, a brilliant, personal, and completely unique book that somehow manages to combine all of Dyson's diverse interests and experiences. The book traces the history of the relationship between people, technology, and nature over the past 3 centuries. It certainly does not. It does that in outline, but from an era when humans were at nature's mercy and technology was limited to the tools we created with our own hands. Okay. All right, settle down there. See, more humans are still at the mercy of nature, obviously. Has there ever been a year that made that truer than 2020? And 2020 hasn't even launched its hurricane season or its fire season. Humans are still at the mercy of nature, and humans still survive with the technology built by their own hands. Let's see here. To the technology and digital revolutions of the last centuries, when nature seemed to be relinquishing control. What on earth? What on earth? When has nature ever seemed to be relinquishing control? I think I know what the publicist whoever wrote this means. In this book, Dyson tells the stories of a number of figures throughout history who stood on the opposite side of this trajectory, who resisted technology's forward march. And he hypothesizes the arrival of a new era now begun in which network digital technology has actually gone analog and started to resemble nature in its independence and intractability. What does that mean? Gone analog. Dyson begins his ambitious story with an exchange between Leibniz and Tsar Peter the Great In 1716, Leibniz proposed to the Tsar 3 grand projects that he thought should be pursued, among them at an eastward expedition to explore the coast of American Northwest, the development of a digital computer that would dramatically supplement and expand the rational powers of the human mind. In 1741, the Russian Empire would send an expedition to the northwest coast, which Dyson narrates brilliantly here. But the digital computer would have to wait a couple more centuries. From there, Dyson tells the story of Geronimo, the Apache leader who in the late 19th century was one of the last holdouts to elude the United States Army. To track Geronimo and his cohort, the Army organized the first large-scale, high-speed wireless data communications network in North America. A system of 27 stations relaying Morse code messages via reflected sunlight and encompassing some 60,000 square miles of American Southwest. Later, Dyson writes about Samuel Butler, the Victorian-era writer whose novel Erewhon presented a fictional country where advanced machines are outlawed for fear that they could eventually evolve and develop consciousness. Okay. All right, so it sounds like it's going to be all over the map. That could be really interesting. I'll have to check once again to make sure that this is actually coming out in August. But it sounds like a miscellany, and those can often be a lot of fun. All of it depends on the page personality of the author, and I'm unaware of that at the moment, so I don't know what to expect. So let's move on. Yeah, move to this next one. One of these adhesive cardboard things that you can't leave alone. Even once you've managed to pry it open, you can't leave it alone because it's all sticky. So you have to make confetti out of it in order to render it relatively harmless so that it's not sticking to everything else. But here, let's set that carefully aside. And what have we got here? Oh, gross. That's some sort of bill of lading. Oh, okay. All right, let's see what the book is itself here. And this one does not have a pub sheet. So this is by Helen Pilcher, and it's called Lifechanging: How Humans Are Altering Life on Earth. Succession of peppered moths on the cover there, I think. Actually, let's see. Is that the peppered moth? It doesn't tell me. Okay. And Helen Pilcher is a tea-drinking, biscuit-nibbling science and comedy writer with a PhD in cell biology. A former reporter for Nature magazine, she now specializes in biology, medicine, and quirky off-the-wall science, and writes for outlets including The Guardian, New Scientist, and BBC Wildlife. Tea-drinking, biscuit-nibbling. Okay. That is our author. And what is this book? What have we got here? It's got color illustrations on the inside, including a page on dogs. So what is this anyway? Let's see. Although if it's the peppered moth on the cover, you can sort of guess what it is, right? Because the peppered moth is a famous example. For the last 3 billion years or so, life on Earth was shaped by natural forces. Evolution tended to happen slowly, with species crafted across millennia. Then, a few 100,000 years ago, along came a bolshy, big-brained, bipedal primate we now call Homo sapiens, and with that, the Earth's natural history came to an abrupt end. We are now living through the post-natural phase, where humans have become the leading force shaping evolution. This thought-provoking book considers the many ways we've altered the DNA of living things and changed the fate of life on Earth. That would apply to the peppered moth, a species of moth that change color as a result of human activity. We have carved chihuahuas from wolves and fancy chickens from jungle fowl. We've added spider genes to goats and coral genes to tropical fish. It's possible to buy genetically modified pets, eat genetically modified salmon, and watch cloned ponies thunder up and down the polo field. Now, as our global dominance grows, our influence extends far beyond these species. As we warm our world and radically reshape the biosphere, we affect the evolution of all living things, near and far, from the emergence of novel hybrids such as the pizzly bear to the entirely new strains of animals and plants that are evolving at breakneck speed to cope with their altered environment. In this book, the author introduces us to those post-natural creations and talks to the scientists who create them, study, and tend to them. At a time when the future of so many species is uncertain, we meet some of the conservationists seeking to steer evolution into firmer footing with novel methods like the sperm copter, coral IVF, and plans to release wild elephants into Denmark. Okay. If I remember correctly, reading around in the press, the pizzly bear is not an example of what that jacket copy describes. The pizzly bear is the polar bears breeding with grizzly bears to no plan involved, but the polar bear's environment is disappearing. And keep in mind, the polar bear's environment has disappeared many times. It's not humans are causing that environment to disappear right now, but that environment was not permanent at all. And polar bears are an enormous, specialized bear that is purely adapted to that environment. Now, if that environment starts to change, even if it starts to change quickly, the species is going to try to adapt. And one of the ways they're going to do that is to meld their off-branch back into the mainland bear, which is the grizzly bear. And that is how you get a pizzly bear. You get polar bears and grizzly bears intermating as the polar bears are forced closer and closer to the grizzly bear's biome. I wonder if the book gives us a picture of a pizzly bear. Will it give us a picture of a pizzly bear there? Yes, it will. The pizzly bear is a cross between a polar bear and a grizzly. This is Tips, a pizzly bear from the Onsbruck Zoo in Germany. As the world warms and the ranges of the two parent species increasingly overlap, hybrids like this are becoming more common in the wild. Okay, all right, they are. That is a pizzly bear. One can only hope that it won't feature the worst traits of both those bears. Polar bears are extremely smart. Extremely smart. They can play well into the future. They can plot your moves and theirs well into the future. They are extremely smart and also absolutely gigantic. Grizzly bears are a hair less gigantic, but far more muscular, and although they are not extremely smart, they are homicidally angry at all times. 24 hours a day, day in and day out, season in and season out. They are furious all the time. And I wouldn't want to combine those two. I wouldn't want to do that. Let's see here. Okay, yes, and this bottom picture on the same page as the pizzly bear is the peppered moths, who are on the cover of this book. Peppered moths changed color during the Industrial Revolution, when a well-timed mutation led to the emergence of a sooty-colored form. My great-uncle Rick's peppered moth is fourth up from the bottom right-hand corner, so her great-uncle added to that display. Okay, great. So we have... this is just going to... Okay, so and this page that had dogs on is obviously going to be about domestication, the process of domestication and how that alters breeds. All right, fantastic. Fantastic. So this is the Bloomsbury Sigma series, which is all about popular science. I think we've seen a couple of books in this collection, and that is the first page. There is a pizzly bear on the front cover. All right, great, fantastic. No idea about a release date. I don't like to touch a bill of lading, but maybe it tells me. Probably not. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Oh, okay. This gives an on sale date of early May, but that might be different. So, Life-Changing by a tea-sipping, biscuit-nibbling author. And then we have this last one of these big white envelopes. And then we'll be done. We actually had mail all week long. See that? That can't always be true. This one is pleasingly heavy, so let's see here. Oh no. Oh no. All right. We saw this already. This is the finished copy of something that we saw in advance copy, and I'm cracked wise about it then, so I'll try to control myself now. The date here on this is April 28th. I don't know if that is still true, but this is the latest book by Roberto Colasso. This is the finished copy of The Celestial Hunter by Roberto Colasso, translated from the Italian by Richard Dixon. In this book, the 8th book in his ambitious and unclassifiable series exploring world mythologies and the history of civilization. Yeah, I'm trying to control myself here. This was not imagined as a series. You might as well say it's the author's 8th book. Don't say it's the 8th book in a series. This was not imagined as a series. This is... Oh, anyway, sorry. Roberto Colasso tells a fascinating story focused on mankind the hunter, and about the relationship between humans and animals throughout history and in the stories we tell. With this as his primary object, the author takes us on a tour of Greek myths, telling tales of the prodigious hunter Orion, the Argonauts and their quest for the Golden Fleece, and of Artemis and Actaeon, the hunter who was devoured by his own dogs. At points, Colasso delves into paleoanthropology, charting the course of mankind's development into a scavenging meat eater and ultimately a group hunter. Colasso explores the writings of philosophers with a particular focus on Plato's laws and the works of Plotinus. The author began his magnum opus with the publication of The Ruins of Cash in 1983. He did not plan this as a multi-part series. This is not a magnum opus. It is not that all these books are all part of one book, all part of one coherent project. The Ruins of Cash. Anyway. Since then, he has published perspective-shifting books on Kafka, the Vedas, Baudelaire, among other topics. In 2018, Farrar, Straus & Giroux published a new translation of Cash, and early in 2019, we published Colasso's The Unnamable Present, about our contemporary world. Okay, well, we will see this whether it comes out on its scheduled date or not. I have had the advance copy of this for a while, or I had it for a while and then I sent it away. But now I have the finished copy, and there is no sending away. There is no sending books away now, so I will look into this. I will read it and see what it does. I'm stuck with it. I can't mail it to an aficionado. I have to read it and deal with it myself. So there you go. That was the. I never thought I'd say these words again. The last mail haul of the week. We have The Celestial Hunter by Roberto Colasso. We have Lifechanging by Helen Pilcher. And we have Analogous by George Dyson. All very properly nonfiction. Very happy about that. All fairly thought-provoking. So I'm glad to get it. I can't believe that I have to clean up mail on the floor. That's great. I don't expect it to last, so don't get used to it. It'll be a trickle. If it keeps on going, it'll be a trickle. But I'll take a trickle, and I'll gladly share it with you. I've missed this. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.